changing woman, the one who created the 4 tribes of the Navajo people, was basking in the sun and became pregnant by the sun god while bathing in a pool. She gave birth to twin boys. Now Yitsu, the evil giant, learned of these children and set out to devour them. Changing woman concealed their existence and lied to him to make him go away. Both boys grew up and they set out to destroy the Nehi, who were abominations born of unnatural means. Welcome to the Occult and the Apocalypse with Kristen, aka Fire Tarot Mama, where I tell you how they took what was once widely known about God, spirituality, and you, and how they locked it away. Come with me while I show you what I've learned from science, religion, cultural beliefs, and mythology to turn the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Now, they encountered Spider-Woman, who gave them each an eagle feather to protect them from several monsters, giant serpents, giant birds, and giant bears. They go to visit their father, the sun, Johanni, and although there are multiple versions of this story, they climb to the sky and sneak past the guards to the sun house. They take on several trials and tribulations to prove they are the sun god's children, and then their father gives them weapons to kill the rest of the Nehi, including the chief of the Nehi, Yitsu. One of these weapons are a quiver of lightning bolts. Now the Nehi are finally killed off, and all that's left is Yitsu, and he's the largest and most powerful. There's a plan between the brothers to taunt the giant out and slay him with a lightning bolt. These twins are Nyanzani, the eldest and more of a warrior, and Tobolashini, the one who is granted wisdom and intelligence. Although both male, they represent masculine and feminine duality energies within every human, and they represent that strength and wisdom can overcome any evil. Now, if you were with me last week, we talked about the Nephilim. Here we have the Nei, and just as you'll find giants in every culture, you'll find twins in them as well. Now with the Dogon tribe, which we've spoken about in another episode, their creation myth states that the first living creatures created by the sky god Amma was Nomo. Soon after being created, Nomo transformed and multiplied into 4 sets of twins. One of the twins rebelled against the universal order that Amma had created. Therefore, in order to restore order, Amma sacrificed another of the Nomo and dispersed their body all over the land. The story goes, where a body part fell, a shrine was erected. According to the Dogon, the Nomo twins descended from the sky in a vessel accompanied by fire and thunder. They created a water reservoir and dove into the water as they live in a watery world. Interestingly enough, we've recently heard with disclosure that UAPs may come from the water. Now, in Mesopotamia, we have Inanna or Ishtar and her twin brother Utu or Shamash. Now, Sumerian pantheon begins with the great mother goddess Namu. She's a loving and nurturing goddess who rose from the primordial waters and gave birth to An and Ki. An is the king of all gods, and Ki is the goddess of the earth. And they were intertwined in the beginning, having very little space between them. This leads to Enlil's birth, which separated the two. Separately, Enki, Enlil's half-brother, was born of Namu and An. Enlil's son, the god of the moon, and Enki's daughter, the goddess of the reeds and fertility, become consorts, and the brothers become paternal and maternal grandfathers to the twins. Inanna becomes venerated as the goddess of Venus, and Utu becomes the god of the sun. Now, the Greeks also had important twins, Apollo and Artemis. They were the twins of Zeus and Leto. Both were considered divine archers. Apollo was the god of the sun, and Artemis the goddess of the moon. Apollo and Artemis were both expert with the bow and arrow. Apollo used his arrows for anger and revenge, and Artemis was the best huntress in the world. They are considered both to be light bringers in the world together, and they were opposite in many ways as well. And there was quite a bit of sibling rivalry. Now, in Norse mythology, they have Freyr and Freya. He was associated with kingship, fertility, peace, prosperity, fair weather, and good harvest. She was associated with love, beauty, fertility, sex, war, gold, and Sed, which was magic for seeing and influencing the future. The Norse also have the twins Balder and Hoder. Balder's death is said to be the harbinger of Ragnarok. Now, in Hinduism, the Ashkans are the sons of the sun god Surya. I'm seeing a trend here with the sun god and the twins. They are associated with medicine, health, healing, sciences, and twilight. They're mentioned 398 times in the Rig Veda and have 50 hymns dedicated specifically to them. The Romans had Romulus and Remus, twin brothers whose story leads to the foundation of Rome after Romulus kills Remus. This origin story traces back all the way to the actual establishment of Rome, and there's believed to be a hint of truth within it. Now, in the Bible, there were two sets of twins that were really indicated of importance. There's Jacob and Esau, and then Phares and Zerah. There's also an apostle named Thomas the twin. We'll discuss that shortly. Now, Jacob and Esau were very well known. Esau, the red, hairy hunter twin, and Jacob, the softer, younger twin. Jacob tricks Esau out of his birthright, and after wrestling later with a messenger of God, is known as Israel. Now, Phares and Zerah may be less well known, but they're actually very important figures. Phares and Zerah were born to Tamar. Tamar was originally married to the son of Judah, who was a son of Jacob, okay? When his son died, as per custom, Tamar was married to the son's brother, Onan. Now, this actually created an issue with the inheritance. According to the law, a wife was married off to her husband's brother if he should die. However, any children that she conceived would have been attributed to her first husband, the deceased older brother, and not her current husband. In an effort to protect his inheritance, Onan intentionally avoided impregnating Tamar by practicing coitus interruptus, otherwise known as the pull-out method. This act was said to have angered God, and Onan was struck dead. Now, Judah still had a son, Shelah, but he was not of age yet. And honestly, Judah saw Tamar now as a threat and likely cursed, so he's hesitant to promise Shelah. And since Shelah's not old enough for married, he says, go back to the town that you come from, to your family, and I'll send for you once Shelah is old enough for marriage. However, he does not send for her and does not marry her to Shelah, betraying his oath and his duty. Now, after Judah's wife dies and he's past the mourning period, he goes to leave for Timnath to share his sheep. Tamar hears that he will be there, and she dresses as a prostitute and meets him there. She's dressed as a prostitute with a long veil covering her face, and she seduces Judah. Unbeknownst to either of them, Tamar becomes pregnant. Judah promises her a goat for her services, but he doesn't have one. So he leaves his staff, his seal, and his cord with her as collateral while he goes and gets the goat. As soon as he leaves, she leaves, and he comes back with the goat, and no one can identify the prostitute, and they say, we don't really know anyone like that around here. A few months later, Judah hears that Tamar is pregnant. He orders her death because, although he did not follow the law and marry her to his remaining son, she is part of his house and still considered the wife of his sons, and therefore essentially his property. She sends him the staff, seal, and cord and tells him that these are the items that belong to the man that impregnated her. He recognizes that these are his items and actually repents for his actions in immorality. He releases her from her death sentence, and Perez and Zerah are born. Now, not unlike their grandfather, Jacob's birth, the twins fight in the womb. Zerah's hand emerges first, and a red cord is tied around it to mark him as first. But his hand is pulled back in, and Perez is then born first. Zerah becomes an ancestor to King David and later Jesus. And per Ethiopic tradition, Perez becomes the king of Persia. The holy line of Judah, ancestor to King David and later Jesus, born out of trickery and deceit. Now, although those are officially the most important twins in the Bible, there may be some that are more important, but their being twins is not necessarily highlighted. There are some that theorize that Cain and Abel were twins. There is not a lot of supportive documentation, however, there is a possibility. In fact, some believe that although born at the same time, Cain is the seed of the adversary and Abel is the seed of Adam, and that potentially Eve was tempted with a lot more than an apple in the Garden of Eden. Either way, in Genesis 4, 1 through 18, it states, "Now the man knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have produced a man with the help of the Lord. Next she bore his brother Abel." Because of how this is written, many surmise that Cain and Abel were twins, particularly because it does speak later about Adam knowing his wife again, indicating a separate pregnancy and birth for Seth, as well as their unnamed daughters. This is important because it seems like these births were separate. They would have been recorded separately, right? I'm not exactly sure what I think about Cain and Abel only being half-brothers. However, I would certainly buy that they were twins. It's definitely something interesting to think about. Now, another twin very briefly mentioned in the Bible is Thomas the twin. His twin was never officially named, however, he is referred to as if the writer anticipated the reader to know whose twin he was. In fact, the word Thomas is thought to have not been a name, but a descriptor, because the word Thomas means twin, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Get ready to go on a little bit of a side quest with me, and some people won't be able to take what I have to say, and they'll scroll away or stop the podcast and go on, and that's fine. I wish you well. Now, according to the New Testament, Jesus had multiple brothers and sisters. I'm sorry to break it to you, but Mother Mary was most definitely not a virgin for her entire life. In fact, and this is just really simply a personal belief and not one that I need you to believe in, but I don't even need Mother Mary to have been a virgin in the first place in order for Jesus to have been the divine Son of the Creator of all. In fact, she was very likely not a virgin at all. So now that people who can't even consider what I just said to be true have already scrolled in anger, I'll explain. Could Jesus have been born of a virgin? Absolutely. I believe the Creator can make anything happen. Do I believe that our Father, our Creator, would put a 15-year-old girl in the position at the risk of being stoned to death by impregnating her before marriage? It's not the God that I know. I also know that prior to Jesus, there have been many claims of virgin births to divine beings. In fact, essentially every religion has had at least one Messiah born of a virgin. It's been seen in Sumerian, Babylonian, and Akkadian religions, ancient Egyptian religions, Zoroastrianism, Greco-Roman, and Hellenistic literature. Judaism sees advanced age births, and the second book of Enoch says that Melchizedek was born of a virgin, Sophronim. It's also found in Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Aztec culture, British culture, Mongolian culture, Japanese culture, Native American culture, the Yuba deity era, and in Chinese culture. So Jesus would certainly be in good company if he was born of a virgin. But I also accept that I cannot know 100% with certainty. The only thing I know for sure is that Jesus, the Christ, is the way. Many came before him and many have come after. The details, whether or not his mother was a virgin or whether or not he was tortured on a cross, aren't all that consequential to me. What matters to me are his words, his thoughts, and actions, and the words, thoughts, and actions of those around him. So in John 10:31 through 38, the following exchange is recorded. The Jews picked up stones again to stone him. Jesus answered them, I have shown you many good works from the Father. For which of them are you going to stone me? The Jews answered him, It's not for a good work that we're going to stone you, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself God. Jesus answered them, Is it not written in your law, quote, I said you are gods, unquote? If he, meaning the Father here, has called them gods to whom the word of God came, and Scripture cannot be broken, do you say of him whom the Father has consecrated and sent into the world, you are blaspheming because I said, I am the Son of God? If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, that you may know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father. Now, much later, John 14:19 through 20, Jesus says, Before long, the world will not see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you will also live. On that day, you will realize that I am in my Father, and you are in me, and I am in you. So first, Jesus tells his accusers, hey, it's your law that says that those that are given access to the divine are gods. You've seen what I can do. Can't you see that I'm walking in God's divine steps and God is working through me? Later, he tells his disciples, God has worked through me, and in working through me, allowed me to awaken you to be worked through as well. The thing that's working through me is also in you, and because I found the Father within and taught you, you now have it too. He also tells us man will do greater things than he. So since Jesus tells me that we are the same, and I've found my own personal connection to the divine, and I encourage you to do the same. And since my mother was not a virgin, and neither was yours, I don't require it to make Jesus divine. Plus, I know that many books were left out of the Bible because it made Jesus too human. Others because they made Jesus too divine. Why is this important? Side quest achieved. Because there's a firm theory that Thomas the twin was, in fact, the twin of Jesus the Christ. Are you clutching your pearls yet? Well, Jesus was known to have 4 brothers and at least 2 sisters. His brothers were James, Joseph, Judas, and Judas was often called Jude, and then Simon. Now, there's some question as to whether or not some of these children were Joseph's from his first marriage, since he was a widower. However, it's not entirely clear. It appears James and Joseph are the two eldest. And it seems that early Christians in several of the texts that were later deemed apocryphal thought that Jude was Jesus' twin brother. In the Acts of Thomas, written somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd century, likely in Syria, it clearly refers to Thomas as Judas Thomas. This could indicate that the Apostle Thomas, sometimes known as Doubting Thomas, was in fact Jesus' twin brother. And interestingly enough, the word Thomas, the name Thomas, is an Aramaic equivalent to the word Didymus, which translates to twin. Therefore, Judas Thomas would actually be Judas the twin. Now, in a separate text, the Gospel of Thomas, which is found in the Nag Hammadi cache of scrolls, it begins saying, "These are the secret sayings that the living Jesus spoke, and Didymus, Judas, Thomas recorded." In another Nag Hammadi text, the Book of Thomas the Contender, or also just known as the Book of Thomas, there's a dialogue between Jesus and Judas Thomas. In this, Jesus calls him my twin and my brother. Now, in this story, Jesus says, "Now, since it has been said that you are my twin and true companion, examine yourself." Of course, this is in reference to Thomas needing to see the resurrected Jesus himself. And of course, there's another apocryphal text called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which dates to the mid to late 2nd century and is one of the few texts that describe Jesus as a child, almost as if it were written by a family member. It records him bringing clay birds to life as a young child, which is also recorded in the Quran 5:110, as well as in a medieval Jewish work called Toledot Yeshu. It also describes him cursing other children and neighbors. It follows Jesus through the growth of understanding and harnessing his divine powers. And after growing, rather than cursing and blinding, he heals and uplifts. It also recounts the story in Luke when Jesus taught at the temple when he was 12. Scholars believe that the use of the word Thomas was not intended to be a name, but a descriptor. So could Jesus have had a twin? I can't say for certain that he didn't, but that would certainly change the church's narrative. Is it possible a small detail was left out, let's say like a twin, who happened to be attributed the hardest and furthest mission after Jesus' death? Thomas preached beyond the Ganges, out in India, so therefore out of sight, out of mind. In order to make the divinity more divine, could this have been hidden to fit the church's narrative? Stranger things have happened. In fact, almost every cultural belief or religion has at least one, if not multiple, sets of twins within their ranks. So what was the cultural or spiritual significance of twins in different cultures? Well, the Navajo people weren't the only indigenous tribes to have twins heavily featured in their mythos. The Pueblo tribes, Seneca and Sioux, have especially addressed twins as well. To the Seneca, twins in their mythos represent duality, good and evil. For every good thing that Sprout makes, Flint makes something completely opposite. In Zuni tradition, there are children of the sun god, and they help with creation. So another sun god with twins. In Chinese culture, the He He Exaran, or laughing twins are Taoist immortals that symbolize harmony and joy and still make appearances at weddings and celebrations today. In West Africa, the birth rate for twins is about 4 times that the global average. And many cultures in the area are considered twins to have a closeness with the supernatural world and can bring great good or great evil to their families. Many cultures believe in twins sharing a soul, often referred to now as a higher self or an oversoul. And if one of the twins dies, some cultures will make a doll of the lost twin so that its soul has somewhere to dwell in order to protect the living twin. Now, in medieval times and among some Asian cultures, twins were considered an evil omen, and sometimes one or both would be abandoned as babies to die. And unfortunately, we know that the evil Dr. Mengele did horrific experiments on twins in the name of the Third Reich. Now, twins have been ascribed many supernatural abilities. Of course, these abilities are available to everybody, but it's very possible that twins have an easier time tapping into them because they are resonating at the same frequency or vibration. Some of these attributes are mind reading, developing specialized languages that cannot be decoded, and a sense of ESP when it comes to the other twin. Now, for twins separated at birth, many of them tend to lead parallel lives without knowing anything about each other. Many complain of a sense of something never quite feeling right or something missing in their life if they're not raised together. No matter how you slice it or what corner of the earth you look, twins have been heavily featured in religions and mythology around the world. Sometimes feared, others revered, but always reminding us of the dualistic nature of life and the interconnectedness of each other. It does make one wonder why twins seem to show up during monumental changes in belief systems and when or what form twins will come next. In the meantime, thank you for helping me bring the occult and the apocalypse simply into the hidden and the revealed. Join me next week where we're going to talk about several religious and cultural traditions such as circumcision, coming of age around 13, sacred hair, and separately but similarly, head covering, as well as a few more. Where do we see these practices? Where do they originate from? And what are they intended to spiritually mean? And should you be doing some of them today? Thank you. Have a good week.